This is Andy McGrillen, and you're listening to Others from Another Mother.
Welcome to Others from Another Mother. My name is Dan Cleary, and today I am thrilled to speak to Andy McGrillen, who you guys mostly know as the host of what I consider to be probably the best UFO podcast going, That UFO Podcast. But more importantly at the moment, Andy also is now an author. He wrote this book, Atlas of Unidentified Flying Objects and Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon. Andy, it's good to have you here, buddy.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Most of the listeners, I think, that I have probably are familiar with who you are. But today you are on the other end of the questions, which is going to be hard for me because I've said to you before, and I tell everybody, I think that you are probably the best interviewer in the field. I really, really appreciate your style of interview. You have very good questions. You let your guest answer, and then you kind of move on to the next question. It's really like kind of refreshing. You let people talk, which is really nice.
Thanks. That is not me in my day-to-day life. I think my wife would attest to that. I tend to be pretty bad at letting people finish what they're saying. But somehow, for whatever reason, a lot of people say it, so I'll take your word for it. On the podcast, I do let people speak and finish, and I think that tends to work for me. Maybe I appreciate what you're saying, what you think of me as an interviewer and things like that. I've no background in interviewing or anything, just being nosy and thinking, oh, well, you know, back 5.5 years ago when I started the podcast, I listened to a couple of UFO podcasts back then, and I think like anyone, you listen and go, you hear a question answered and think, I hope they ask this or they follow up on this. And just because of multiple reasons, they maybe don't. And you go, I would have asked X, Y, or Z. And I thought, do you know what? Let's give it a go. And I'll be the person that people are moaning at to ask the questions off the back of things. So I try and ask what I would like to hear, which I think helps. And yeah, I'm like yourself, I'll have like a list of questions that I plan on asking. But as the interview goes on, it might be, that one's a bit pointless now. They've kind of touched on that, or we'll come back to that one. And then the kind of follow-up questions for me are kind of what can make or break like a good interview. So,
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, thank you. So,
no, of course.
I like being on the other side of the questions. It's relaxing.
Okay, well, this should be easy tonight. We share a mutual love for the topic, so I guess I want to start. I know that your listeners have heard the story before, but I would love to know what the common question: what got you into this? Why UFOs? Of all the strange things that we get into as kids, whether it's ghosts or Bigfoot or the Loch Ness monster, what about UFOs grabbed you, and how did it start for you?
I had an interest in quite a few of those things, to be honest. Loch Ness Monster. I would go to my local library in Knightswood where I was not born, but where I was raised, and I had the little gold. I'm sure it was gold. It wasn't green. Library card. And I would go in and you'd have like a couple of VHS, listeners old enough to remember videotapes. I would get out videos on the Loch Ness Monster. I'd get out books on Loch Ness Monster. UFOs was a favourite topic of mine as well. I would tend to find some of the UFO videotapes would be a little bit older than I could rent at a young age. But yeah, always enjoyed that kind of stuff, like the who built the pyramids, that kind of thing, like ancient history. Real geeky as a kid. And I'm talking, I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, like
Same.
with that, that kind of interest. So it was always quite geeky as a kid, and that never left me. And then when I was about 9, 10, 11, mid-90s, because I'm 39, I was born in 1986. Scottish people look older because tough paper runs, as we say. Yeah. I was leaving the Boys Brigade, so I don't think you've got that in the US, but in the UK it's kind of like the Scouts, but we have the Scouts here as well, but the BB, so the Boys Brigade, a little bit of mix of kind of police academy, military academy, all kind of blended into one. A lot of kind of discipline and stuff like that taught, but a lot of fun. I remember as well. You do like badges for various different things, like orienteering and all that kind of stuff. And used to go to like a local church for it. I am in no way, shape, or form religious, but it was held in a church, as many of these kind of groups are. And one night, it was like in October, November, probably into November. Again, it was the mid-90s. It's hard to remember exactly when. No camera phones, all that kind of stuff. Not even mobile phones really at that time. You didn't have, not everyone had one. And left the church. And it was a really built up area. So don't imagine like fields or in any way, shape or form. Knightswood, in an area of Glasgow in Scotland, is really built up. It's houses as far as the eye can see, high rise tower blocks and things like that. So it's all really busy. Schools, universities, shops. And about 9:30 or something, 10 o'clock at night, I looked along the road, and not up in the sky, but imagine a Ferris wheel on the ground at a funny angle, maybe 30 degrees, I always kind of say like that, spinning ridiculously fast. 5 of us saw this thing. There was me, my mum, my sister, my friend and his mum. And I just remember we all kind of looked at it, thought it was really odd, really strange. I couldn't make out, like a shape. I'd be lying if I said it was a disc on its side or a saucer or anything like that. It was just lights firing round really fast. If it was a Ferris wheel, well, we never knew about the local carnival that was on literally 5 minutes from where I stayed, and we would have. Even then, if this was a ride of some kind, there was no other rides, and everyone on it would have been dead because of the speed it was moving, right?
Right.
So I just remember we looked at it for like a minute and then kind of walked on home. And that was it. Yeah, we didn't walk towards it. We kind of lived diagonally along. You had to go along a different way to get to it, and that's always kind of stuck with me as a really odd sighting. And I think even to this day, if someone lets you down in a topic or a group or a message, or you think people are going in crazy weird directions, and it's debunking or psyops or whatever people want to call it, I've always got that to kind of cling back to be like, do you know what? That was really interesting. That's one that I'll never debunk. I'll never know what it is or what it was.
Right.
But for me, it's enough to kind of cling back on and go, you know what? There's something in this. And it really helps me as well, mate, that when someone shares a story with me, I don't say like I necessarily believe everyone's story, but in the same way that not everyone will believe mine. But it's enough that I'll listen to anyone's story and just accept that there's some really strange things people experience or they see that you can't explain. And who am I to kind of poo-poo what they have seen or experienced based on me not having experienced that? So that's always kind of stuck with me.
Yep. That's another thing about your interview style is there's no judgment in your voice, in your questions, in your tone, and like you're saying, you let people speak. You also let them tell their stories and talk about their experiences openly in a very unjudgmental place. And it's really a kind. You're a very kind interviewer as well. You know what I mean?
And do you know what? There's probably very, very subtle inflections for the few interviews I've ever had where maybe I've been a little bit suspicious or not liked a tangent a guest has gone on. I probably have some very subtle tells where you'd be able to go, Andy's not quite buying this one. I'll let people work those out. It doesn't happen that often. And then, like you say, I'm always happy to let someone talk and present their side of a story. But I've had the odd guest before where maybe they've started going down a route where I'm like, this isn't really what I brought you on for. And I don't quite buy into what you're selling at this point. Yeah.
That's tough to deal with. But you having your experience is a nice anchor point. So I think this topic has the ability to confuse all of us and make us question reality and question what our own experiences are. So for someone like you who's had an experience like that, if you ever start to doubt it, you can just go back to this anchor point of, but I've had this experience. I know I experienced something strange with other people. So it kind of keeps you grounded a little bit as far as going forward with the conversation.
Yeah, and it helps. And you probably get folks, Dan, message you and say about, I'm a bit burnt out with the topic, or there's a lot going on and it's getting confusing. I'm going to take a break, or I'm going to take a step back, or I get asked, how do I deal with that not burning out? And I'm like, it is difficult at times, because I think especially trying to keep up with the political side of things.
Yeah.
congressmen and women getting involved, task forces, whistleblowers coming out and maybe having a narrative that people don't like, and it's not kind of what your disclosure looked like. I'll put it that way. Um, I always say to folks, look, forget even my own citing. If you look back on the history of the topic, those can be good times to go, do you know what? I get right now we've got Burleson and Luna and Burchett and all these folks kind of pushing, it looks like, for the right thing, but I know there's a lot of nuance around that, and what they do and what they say isn't always the same thing. Take a step away from it and just maybe ignore that for a bit and go check out sometimes I listen to old Coast to Coast stuff with Art Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, going back like 20 years, and you kind of hear old interviews or even just some of the old call-ins. Or do you know what? I'll check out a book I've not read yet or listened to, or I'll dive into like a really old deep dive. I think there's a lot of options that if you get kind of stuck in the here and now and you feel it's like either going all over the place or it's a holding pattern, there's other areas of the topic. I think it's just really easy, and I'm guilty of it as well, of fixating on too much of one time. I think maybe about a year and a half ago or such, I think it was maybe after the Grush hearings, I remember a few folk reached out to me and they were like, are you going to get some interviews or chat about some stuff that's not the politics or the government stuff now? Because some folks, it's not their wheelhouse, and they don't want to hear it, either through a distrust of government, or there's only so much they can hear with it, or they like the other side of the topic or other sides of the topic. It's not an either or. So yeah, that for me is a good go-to.
That's good advice. I found myself recently, I mean, I think we all kind of have that burnout feeling of like, there's so much news almost every day. And it's hard to keep up on. But I started watching old episodes of Sightings again recently. They're all on YouTube. And it kind of brings me back to like the one, like I talk about the wonder of UFOs a lot. Like just like the wonder of it, like the magic of what it could mean and how exciting it is to think about. And that kind of tends to reignite my interest if I'm feeling kind of like tired or confused or frustrated, is going back to those things that kind of helped plant and to water the seed of interest.
100%. Yeah, I think people can forget why they got into the topic or why they enjoy it. And I've said a lot on my own podcast. I like football. I'm a football fan, and that's real football, not NFL.
Don't even start with me.
Yeah, the soccer ball. So sometimes, like, my club's got a lot of issues at the minute. So I'm a Rangers supporter. I'll just mention, I won't turn it into a sports podcast, but we've got a lot of problems. And at times you can kind of forget that they want the manager sacked. They want him gone. The style of football is really poor. We're traditionally a team that's up in the top two. We're currently sitting second bottom of a 12-team league. We have a budget that blows the other 10 teams in the league out of the water combined. So there's a lot of stuff just now, and you're kind of turning up to games, which is why you enjoy it, not looking forward to the 90 minutes. And it's like, it's draining because you want to go back to enjoying watching 11 guys kicking a ball about a pitch and trying to score goals. That's the essence of what you grew up playing yourself, why you fell in love with the game, why you spend money, why I travel quite a distance to go and watch games. And you want to get back to enjoying that. And like you say, it's the same with the UFO topic, where go and watch some old shows, stuff that you maybe watched as a kid, you know. What was the William, is it William Fraker who was Riker in, what was his name? Jonathan Frakes, is that it? Who was Riker in Star Trek, and there's the famous memes of him going, "It's fake, it's not real, it's a hoax."
Yeah. That
like
guy.
Strange but True and all that kind of stuff. Those kind of really old shows that maybe a bit cheesy looking now, but it's the kind of stuff as a kid you would watch and be like, "Oh my god, this guy met an alien and it sent him telepathic messages," and just kind of cool stuff that made you, like you say, kind of spark that interest in the topic. And it's really easy to kind of lose that, especially modern day social media. You see a lot of horrible things online. You can be really desensitized to a lot of stuff as well, the way people speak and the way people interact, and just taking that little bit of a sidestep can really make a difference.
Yeah, and people need to remember, well, I mean, for someone like me, and I think maybe you as well, this is fun. It's supposed to be, it's fun, it's fascinating, it's mysterious. To take it super serious, I mean, it's okay to take it seriously, but I think having fun with it is very important, and it helps you avoid that kind of burnout.
Do you know what, Dan? Like, I won't labour the point, but there's a lot of folks online, especially maybe some of them with bigger platforms, who, than your average person, like to tell people what they should and shouldn't like and why their opinion is wrong. Do you know what? I'm not a big Stephen Greer guy at all, right? I've said before, I think he had some really good contacts and good ideas, and he had the right. He was on the right path at the beginning for me, and then maybe that got, for whatever reason, down the line. Maybe it was money, maybe it was fame, maybe whatever. I think his message kind of got lost in later years.
Yeah.
But if you like Greer, if Greer was your on ramp, if Greer's your off ramp, if he's your guy, then brilliant, excellent. But I would always encourage people to go and listen to different voices, listen to people you disagree with, because maybe they'll say something you go, oh, do you know what? Don't agree with 95% of what Dan said there, but he made a really good point about this.
Yeah.
And you can build that into your own opinion, and that, I think, that makes for a much healthier kind of viewing of the topic, rather than being stuck in an echo chamber. And basically, don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't like when it comes to UFOs. That's always what I would say.
Yep. Like you said, hearing other voices, it's still data points. It's still, you could listen to someone say 100 ridiculous things, but there might be two good nuggets of truth in there, or things that make you go down a different path or think a different perspective, or you never know. Cutting yourself off from anything is probably not wise. It slows growth, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So I know you started your podcast at the beginning of COVID. How did you go about getting your first interview, and who was your first interview? What were the first, like, what was the first 2 or 3 months of that UFO podcast like for you?
So, I early March 2020, before we were actually in any kind of lockdown, I bought a microphone for my birthday, and I was like, I maybe wanted to start a podcast. I've listened to podcasts since, like, 12 years, 13 years. I used to listen to, the first one I had was Ian Lee, who, I think everyone knows Ricky Gervais and Sacha Baron Cohen. They started on a show called The 10 O'Clock Show, and they were like side characters, and Ian Lee was like the main host. And they're the ones that became really rich and famous and big off of it. And Ian Lee's done well, but he's not that level of celebrity like Ricky Gervais and Sacha Baron Cohen became. So Ian Lee used to do like a talk radio show, and it was a mix of real people calling in, and there was also some recurring characters would call up. And I used to listen to that podcast back in the day. So I've always enjoyed podcasts, kind of expanded the repertoire or library of them as I've got older. And then got to 2020 and was like, if I'm ever going to start a podcast, doing that thing of a few years of, I could start one, and you talk to your mates and we should start a podcast that everyone probably has now in 2025. And I thought, I'll buy a microphone and it'll either sit in the box and never get used and I'll sell it, or I'll end up using it. So just before COVID, I bought the microphone, and it sat in the box for a good month. And it was probably around the time I would have probably sold it. We were in a lockdown for a few weeks. And I thought, right, let's do this. Let's give it a go. And I was thinking UFOs or football. And I decided there was a lot of football podcasts. UFOs I would give a bit of a crack at. There was a lot of interesting stuff around it at the time. And I remember thinking, who would I want to interview? And then thinking, well, those people, I don't even have a name for the podcast at that point. I just know it was going to be UFOs. And I remember reaching out to a couple of people. One was Nick Pope, because obviously I knew his name being from the UK and all. And he politely declined because he was busy. But I imagine he was also like, you've not even got a name for a podcast yet,
right, right.
Any listeners. So I appreciate that. But he was very polite about it and was like, look, get in touch with me down the line once you're a little bit more established. And then I was thinking, what documentaries have I maybe watched recently? And I remember seeing Gary Voorhees, maybe on Unidentified. I think that had been on a few months before in the UK. And I remember thinking, I've not seen his name a lot. So I YouTubed and I Googled his name on YouTube. I searched his name on YouTube, as the kids would say. And he hadn't done many interviews at all. And I thought, well, maybe, given he's not done many, he'll be open to coming up on a really small starter podcast. And I reached out to him. And he was like, yeah, no problem. Let's book a date in. So I have somewhere in the shed that I record in a notepad still, and I literally on like a little notepad, a little bit like that one.
Hmm.
Um, I just wrote down a load of questions, introduction, who are you, like scribbled them down, and on my laptop I had with the microphone that I bought. It was a Blue Yeti X microphone.
Of course it was.
Yeah, it's most people's starter
Of
microphone.
course.
Yeah, the go to. It's under £100 in the UK and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I remember setting up, not even being sure how to record. I remember going on to Skype, um, and going right. Okay, I can record on Skype. Wasn't I wasn't even sure on audio quality. It's so bad. I think the first 7 episodes or 8 episodes, I've got my microphone plugged in, but I never knew to change the microphone setting. So I was using the laptop's
Of
mic
course. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
record, even though I'm speaking into like a decent microphone. So rookie mistakes that you make in the
Of
beginning.
course.
I think I recorded with Gary Voorhees, who, for folks who don't know, he was the radar operator for the Nimitz Princeton Tic Tac event in 2004, one of them. Gary was really good. We spoke for like 2.5 hours. And I remember saying to him, look, if it goes badly, I won't even ever release it. And I remember I think I must have spent like 4 hours, 5 hours editing because I didn't know how to use the editing software. So I spent the whole time going, how do I take this out? How do I change this? How do I on Google and YouTube and going back and forward? So it took me ages to edit. Something that would take me like less than a minute now took me
Yeah.
like hours and hours and hours.
Yep.
So I put it out there, and I remember I think it was the 1st of May. And 2 people listened. One of them was me checking that it had went out okay, and I didn't listen back to the whole thing. I never listen back to my episodes. I don't listen to myself. I don't like listening to myself. That's where listeners tend to get in touch and say, Andy, you've left in a little bit where you've said you're going to cut something out, just so you know. And I'm like, I forgot about that one. I kind of live edit in my head as I'm
Right.
as I'm going along. So yeah, Gary Voorhees was the first, and then within a few days, I spoke to Sean Cahill. Again, Sean Cahill involved with that Nimitz Princeton event. People will know Sean.
Hmm.
I think episode 3 was Jason Gleaves, who's a UK-based researcher. I'd heard him on the late Howard Hughes radio show a few months before that, maybe even a year before. And he put me in touch with a couple of people, and Gary and Sean done the same, where people were really nice and they were like, look, really like talking to you. It was really laid back and everything. And I imagine if you go back now, it was, can I swear on this?
Of course. Absolutely.
It was rough as fuck, right?
Yeah.
I imagine the interviews were really choppy. It was probably very conversational as I try to do now, but I was really raw and rough.
Of course.
But the guests were really nice, and they were like, I can put you in touch with someone else, and let me know if you need anything. And that kind of word of mouth really helped, to the point where I think my 8th or 9th episode was Nick Pope. So the guy who 2 months ago had said wasn't going to come on, a couple of people spoke to him and said, this guy Andy was really nice. He's UK based. It was also, though, the episode that almost made me stop the podcast.
Why? Tell me that.
So I'd recorded with like Nick Pope, and he was out in Arizona, and I remember he was like, it'll just be audio because oh no, it's Tucson, Arizona.
Hmm.
And he was like, my internet isn't great, so the bandwidth won't be good. And this is all stuff I was literally learning on the go. And I was like, all right, okay. So we were on Skype, and I turned the cameras off. And he sounded like, that famous scene in Wayne's World when he's going through the drive-through and he's going, can I get packed and Corla? And yeah. So it was like that. And I was like, oh God. And I was like, I'm just going to let it go because this is like a big guest and I'm just starting. And by this point, I had a couple of 100 people who had listened to the first 6 or 7 episodes. And I remember the whole time had this horrible feeling in my stomach where I was like, I really hope Skype records the local file on his end, and it doesn't, or it didn't back then at least. So I remember like when it finished, I was going, thanks, Nick, thanks, yep, bye. And I stopped the recording, and I remember playing it back, and the whole thing was him just cut.
Oh, man.
And I was like, no.
I'm getting anxiety now just thinking about it.
Mate, I was like, I wish I'd just said to him at the time, can we record a better time? Because he told me he was having issues that day as well. So I remember having to record like a little explainer before to say, look, there's a lot of audio issues with this episode. And I remember putting it out and just saying to my wife, like, I'm really pissed off. Like, that's such a stupid mistake to make. That's what annoys me. That's going to ruin it. That was a chance to kind of, get a
Yeah.
few more eyes that wouldn't normally, or ears at that point, listen. The next night, though, I had Thomas Winterton from Skinwalker Ranch scheduled. So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do that old best thing to do when you've had a setback is get back on the horse straight away. So I recorded the next night and it went really well and I really enjoyed it. And it was video and audio. At that time, I didn't release the video though for the podcasts, but everything went well.
Mm-hmm.
And I put that out almost straight away. And I felt I was like, okay, I'm learning as I go, and that's good advice I think for anyone who's doing this kind of stuff or wanting to do a podcast. Like, you will make mistakes, just make sure you learn from them,
Of course.
and you do it as you go along. So yeah, so I think after a couple of months, I didn't really have a recording schedule at that point, and I think I've always had a reputation for recording an interview and it's out within hours or a day. It's not like I recorded this 6 weeks ago. So I like the stuff I put out, and it's everyone's different, but I like the stuff I put out to be kind of relevant to something that may be happening around that time. I don't plan too far in advance, which can be quite detrimental at times, especially when you're kind of trying to get guests on. But yeah, so it went all right, and numbers wise, it's all relative, but it was like the first couple of weeks. I remember the first week, like 15 people had listened to the first like episode, and I was like, oh my God. And my wife was like, I can't believe people have actually listened to this nonsense. And then a couple of episodes it went out, and it went to a few hundred people. And then I think after from the May to the December, I think it had like 80,000 downloads. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, and I was really happy. And then after a year, it was like 1 point something million, and
Huge.
it's like over 11 million now, which is ridiculous. And that's not even including the YouTubes. Cheers. But listen, if someone starts a podcast and they're getting 1 million downloads a week, or they're getting 10 downloads a week, great, because you've got people listening to your content, and as long as you're enjoying doing what you're doing and you feel it's relevant and worthwhile, then crack on. Like, don't ever let someone else's podcast being more successful or less successful determine what you're going to do, because that's not the point. And the content will kind of speak for itself with a little bit of luck along the way. I always think there's some really good podcasts out there on a lot of different topics that are really good, and they've maybe just not had that little bit of luck yet to kick it on to a level they maybe be happier with.
That's a great point. I've always felt like when I have these conversations, if you and I were not recording right now, I would still be very happy to be having this conversation with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, whether it's recording or not, I'm enjoying this. And I think we do this because we love talking about it. And it's nice to record, other people can hear it, but it's nice to have them even regardless. Have you ever had a show not record, or like you forgot to hit record and you've done the whole interview? I've done that 3 times in the last 15 plus years, and I want to blow my brains out.
So the first time I spoke to Steve Bassett, who's one of the worst guests for that to happen.
Oh man, that's like 6 hours of content.
Yeah. But do you know what? I realised it must have been maybe 25 minutes, half an hour into the recording. And I just remember kind of like, because Stephen, it was the first time I'd spoken to him, and it's a lot when he just goes. And I know Steve Bassett well enough now that we can have a bit of a joke about it. But yeah, I remember he had an issue with his video that day as well. So I think I was kind of maybe not concentrating as much as I normally would, because he didn't have video on. And I was watching, and I just remember kind of looking at it, and I was like, something's not quite right, and something's missing off my screen here. And it was like the record option was still there. And I just remember he was in the middle of some like epic monologue, and I was like, oh my God, when do I tell him? And in my head, I'm going, you'll have been there, Dan. Do I even bother telling him? Do I hit record without him knowing? Do I tell him and start again? And I took the decision to let him finish, and then I just said something. I was like, Steve, I've had a bit of an issue on the recording end here. And he was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's not recording. That's the issue. I've not hit the button.
That's a bit of an issue.
And he was like, why? And I was like, I never hit the button to record. I said hi, and then just kind of got into it. And he was like, well, do we have to start again? He's like, do you not have a backup recording? And I don't know about you, Dan, but I don't do backup recording.
I don't either.
5.5 years. I really should. We're both idiots for not doing that.
Yeah.
Because at least you would have something.
I've never been accused of being the smartest guy in the room, and I never will be. So
no, I'm probably the same, mate. Listen, so yeah, I very much rely on. I'm sure this recording will work and be fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had to start again, and I think he was a little bit grumpy, but I get it. Where he was like, I'm well, I'm not going to go through all that again. And I was like, that's fine. We can go down a different route. And I had to start again. But yeah, that was definitely on me. So I think I've maybe had the odd one where I've been close to not recording, but I think I've got it down now where I like I chat to the guest for maybe 5 or 10 minutes before I hit record normally. Unless someone's really, really tight unless you've got like a really big name, let's just say, and you've got like 57 minutes with them.
Right.
And if you spend 5-10 minutes talking to them, that's not time you're recording. So yeah, I remember just being like, hit record. I enjoy that kind of 3, 4, 5 seconds where it's counting down and I'm like, cool, notes are open. That's good. I've got my pen and paper. Hi everyone, and you're kind of into it then. So I kind of use that moment now. So I think I would recognise now. But yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
And for anyone starting a podcast, it's good to have a checklist, like a checklist that you read of like, are the lights on? Are you recording? All that kind of
Keep
stuff.
meaning to do this. I want something next to me, Dan, that hangs. It just has
a
workflow because I'm really bad for that. And there's so much stuff that I keep meaning to do. Yeah,
right there.
I need something like, and it'd be nice to just have it laminated and all that kind of stuff. Just a little do this. Yeah, I'm good. And even with the process afterwards for editing the audio, the video, which my stuff's just changed recently, actually, how I do that and what I use. Just to have like a little workflow of do this first, then do this, then do this. Because I'm really scatty where I'll be in the middle of something and be like, oh, I'm going to go check my phone. Oh, actually, do you know what? I'm going to go check this. Oh, I've just had a message through. Oh, do you know what? I'm going to do this. Shit, where was I? I was in the middle of that description. Oh, I forgot to do this. Instead of just focusing on a little bit of a process, I'm really bad for that. And it'd be really easy to fix. But yeah.
You mentioned Steve Bassett, and his interviews are always, they're great. I mean, he's so dense and rich with information. His enthusiasm is a blast. But especially when he's on your show, he was on somewhat recently. He's on in the last few weeks, wasn't he?
Yeah, in the last month or so, yeah.
Okay. The time before that, I remember it was like I pulled up the podcast. I listen on my walks every night to something, and you're often in there. And it was like a 2.5 or 3 hour episode, I think. It was, or maybe at least 2 hours.
That was the introduction, yeah.
Yeah, I played a game where I'm gonna check the time after Andy finishes his first question, and I want to see when he gets to the second question. And I believe, I could be wrong, it was almost 40 minutes before you got to your second question.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing gift that he has. I mean, it's incredible. He's a UFO filibuster. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure that was very much a, hi, Steve, been a few months since you've been on, this has happened, where are we with the UFO kind of state of play? And he just goes...
And then you just sit back and let him cook.
Yeah. If I had like an AI background, I could just put myself on and just go into the house for half an hour and come back. And
get in the hot tub for a while.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's amazing. So with the interviews, you've had pretty much everybody in the field on your show. Is there one to this date where you're just like, I can't believe I got this person? Or a few, anything?
There's still people I would like that haven't came on that I'm sure everyone would like.
I want to hear those as well.
Yeah, can't believe I suppose I got like a really early Lou Elizondo interview right at the beginning of his media runs. I think he had done John Greenwald, Black Vault, maybe was his first, maybe. And then he was on with Ryan Sprague, and then the next night was me. I don't always think being first is necessarily the best. I know a lot of people like exclusive, bombshell, but sometimes you listen to an interview and it's someone's first, and then the things they don't say or don't get followed up on can be really good to bring up in an interview. And what I'll try not to do is go back over the same hour, and I'll be like, look, you said da-da-da-da-da. Off of that, can we just go into that in a bit more detail? Can you explain this a little bit more? Can we kind of peel back the onion a little bit? So, and that's where I think if you've got a really decent, I wouldn't even say good, but a really decent interviewer, you would listen to one person's interview and you should be able to listen to it across 5 different podcasts or shows and hear 5 different interviews. Yes, some of the messaging will be the same, but you should be able to get off different roots and branches based on what they say. That's where I think there was a time back in kind of 2020, maybe into 2021, where everybody had a fucking podcast. especially in UFOs. And there's no harm in that. There's no like, oh, everyone, it's not competition, right? There shouldn't be that way of thinking. But what a lot of folk were doing was getting guests on and just having the same chat that you had the day before, or
Absolutely.
I had the day before. And it's like, it's so lazy where, hi, tell us a bit about you. Okay, so you've done this. Tell us about that. You're putting no effort into this. You just want to say, I've had this person on. Personally, I'm disappointed if I get someone on, and at the end of it, I don't feel that the audience has had a different conversation out of at least, a third of the interview.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what was the point? Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
some likes and yeah, I've got some views, but I like it to be something different. And I've come off interviews being a bit disappointed. I've come off interviews thinking it was really decent, and I've come off them not knowing. But yeah, I think the early kind of Lou one was a good one to get. Early George Knapp was quite a big one. I think I had Lou and George Knapp quite close together, and I think in my analytics for like the history of the podcast, that was one where you saw the. And let me just clarify, I've not said this yet. I consider the podcast an audio-based podcast
Hmm.
with the YouTube side of things as well. I get video podcasts are more and more popular. As a kid, I loved radio, and I've always listened to radio. I still listen to a lot of radio. So podcasting is just on-demand radio. So
Yeah.
they're two very different audiences, and that's another one for folks who maybe who maybe don't understand or go into podcasting as much as some folks might. They're two very, very different audiences and ways of consuming, and I think people can mix that up when they're presenting the shows, that they think it's the same audience and it's really not. So my audio side of things is much more, don't know, successful, I'll use that word, than the YouTube side of things. But then
Hmm.
there's other folks who started YouTube shows and then put it out on audio, and they're very different ways of working. So yeah. What was my point? Yeah, so the Lou and George one, you kind of saw the podcast going up nicely, and then those hit, and it went to a different level where it never came back down from those.
Yep.
So I think they were really good for discovery of the podcast. It got a lot of folks on.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of guests I've not had on, Tom DeLong, if you ask me tomorrow,
Of
get someone
course.
on.
That seems to be the number one for a lot of folks.
Yeah. It would be, yeah.
And he just doesn't seem to do them.
No.
I even like, I know him a very little amount because we're in the same industry. I've been around
Yeah.
him a couple times, and I even reached out. I mean, you can't really talk to him directly. You have to talk to like his manager, all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff. And I didn't even get a response. And I'm like, well, the point of my show usually, like, I started my show with the intention of speaking to people mostly in like the entertainment world, whether it's music or film or writers, just to kind of bring in a different audience. And I feel like I felt like creative people have a deeper, sometimes a deeper interest in this topic, and seem to have more experiences than other folks. Like creative people maybe. Anyway, so I thought I could maybe get in with Tom, and that kind of like, we kind of do the same thing for a living, but it didn't seem to work.
Yeah.
But I hope you do get him. I would love to see what you do with a Tom DeLonge.
Yeah. Maybe if he gets another book out. I know Time Rider comes out with AJ Hartley. That won't be one, I don't think. But maybe if like another Secret Machines novel comes out, or
Sure.
Secret Machines has been picked up by, was it Lionsgate? No, what's Christopher Nolan?
Not legend. Is it not legendary? I don't remember. I don't know.
One of those, yeah, one
Yep.
of those big companies that totally brain farting on it just now picked it up. Maybe when those are going to go out on TV or streaming platforms, Tom will be more available for that kind of stuff. Chris Mellon, I would love to have spoken to. He's given me some very polite declines on platforms. I get he's a busy guy. He doesn't do a lot of these things either. I'd love to speak to Stephen Greer still.
Yeah.
I think he might huff a little bit, but I don't think he likes a certain line of questioning. But I think you should be able to have really open conversations with this stuff. Is there anyone else I'd really, really... There's a few folks, like obvious ones that haven't been on, like Travis Walton. I've not had Travis Walton on.
That's funny. Before we started, I was trying to think back to some of my favorite interviews that you've done, and I was wondering, like, has he ever talked to Travis? He must have, but I don't
No.
remember you doing it.
Nah, never came up. But I'm really lucky, and do you know what? I've got a real mix of an audience. I think a lot of folks probably do. But there are folks that people really don't like or want on. but then there's as many folks who do want to hear from those people. So it's one of those you can invite guest X on, and people will be like, "Oh, why are you getting them on? They're a grifter. They're full of bullshit. They're just lying." But you're like, there's there's a lot of sides to the coin. There's more than two sides to a coin usually with this stuff. So yeah, but there's other guests that maybe just aren't my bag,
Mm-hmm.
and I would leave to other people. And see a lot of the really out there. I always use it as and I don't mean it to be derogatory, but you know the whole blue Palladian aliens, loving light being stuff.
I know
I
you
just
love you
struggle.
you love the Star Child people. I know you love those
Yeah,
people.
yeah, mate. Oh, all that light being stuff, and I'm a star seed. Cool, magic. That's got a big audience. Brilliant. Not for me.
Yeah.
So people can crack on. I genuinely, if you got me somebody on tomorrow who was like, I'm a star seed, where'd I go with that? Are
Right.
you okay? You know,
What does that even mean? Like,
yeah.
what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, but there's other people do that kind of stuff. I don't want to spread myself too thinly. I think I've done pretty well to stick to, it's a UFO podcast and it's almost exclusively UFOs. I think the biggest turn I would take is when I've had remote viewers on,
Mm-hmm.
and you maybe have that remote viewing conversation, which usually comes back into the aliens here and there at some point, or UFOs at least. But yeah, so I try and stick to UFOs.
Cool. One more question, then I want to get into the book a little bit. Like, there are so many aspects of this conversation, whether it's the actual nuts and bolts craft, or abductions, or the military aspect. Is there like an inner part of the topic that you're most intrigued with?
Mm,
Like one of the branches of the UFO tree?
yeah, that's a good question. I think it changes definitely because from when I came into the topic doing the podcast, I've always had an interest. So if there's anyone who's died in the wool, I've been into this for 50 years, and you youngsters, I say youngster, 39, but these folks coming along and thinking this is all new. I've seen this before. I've had an interest in the topic since I was a kid. But I appreciate there are folks who have been doing this a lot longer than I have. Yeah, it's a good one. When I came into it in 2020, I was very much like aliens are coming here from different planets and, some weird different craft, and we've got these, tic tac things. However, I think I've got really into this idea that they've been here for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, I do find myself a little bit drawn to the whole underwater side of things. The idea that, and I know it is quite out there, but this whole underwater lab creating these things that moves about, and that
Oh
when the
yeah.
US government try to approach it, the thing disappears for days
Yep.
and then turns back up somewhere else. The idea that off the coast of California there's some kind of base. That's really interesting, and that's something I find really intriguing. Um, I think there's stuff that I've kind of, since I've got involved, really fell away from. Like the whole Black Knight satellite stuff was maybe when I was on the fringes of the topic. You look at that and go, "Oh, that's quite cool. There's a satellite in orbit," and then you dig into it, and there's not.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
so, but yeah, I think that the whole idea that we've got drones here from other civilizations or other planets or other dimensions, keeping an eye on us, observing us for multiple different reasons, is really of interest to me. And I suppose the one folks would know me for not that I don't have an interest in it, but this whole orb thing can really rub me the wrong way, because I think a lot of folks take advantage of it
Mhm.
and show birds being filmed at night time with lights on them above buildings, or really basic drones, or Starlink satellites, or the space station, and they tell you it's an orb and it's a light. And do you know what? Maybe it is, but I don't like in this topic being told what to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a lot of issues with that Hellfire video recently because of that kind of stuff.
We had some nice conversations about that.
We did.
We have a little group chat, and I another thing about you is I appreciate that you push back when you have questions, and it's a good way to be. You have like a proper mind for like discerning, being able to say, first of all, I don't know, or that
Mm.
like, yeah, this is a sexy new video, but I don't, I'm not buying it, I'm not feeling it, and you also don't say this is bullshit. You say I'm having a tough time. What do you guys think? you know,
Yeah.
you're open for the discussion, which is so needed in this topic. I mean, you're great. I think we're both pretty good about staying out of the dramatic stuff that can happen
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
easily online. Like there's no reason for it. We're all trying to do the same stuff, but yeah, you're very cordial with your conversation, and it's nice. It's a breath of fresh air, and it's I think it's the best way to go about this, and I think that's why I've never heard someone say even muster a bad word about you or your show or your style. It's just like you're just you. You're just honest and interested.
I can send you a few accounts that'll say bad words about me. So yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, I fuck them,
Yeah.
as Ross Coulthart would say.
Yeah.
Um, um, I've got three young children and a busy life as it is. I don't need to spend all day online arguing with folks. I don't have the strength or the time for it. And as much as the Scottish in me really wants to sometimes go, quote tweet, fuck off.
Yeah.
Seriously, I don't, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, but that would be, for me, that's me kind of going back a little bit on what I say about telling people what they think. You know, if I'm online saying, this is bullshit, yeah, well, I've got to always caveat, in my opinion. Might not be, and then I look like an idiot. But again, with that video, I thought it was really interesting. Sorry, I keep hitting that. I thought it was really interesting the first time I saw it. And I mean, literally watching the hearing, I watched it. And then with the Discord for the podcast open on the side, was looking at people who were really skeptical of the topic at times, say they found it really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that's a good sign. If the real heavy skeptics are like, wow, this might be something. But then within a few minutes, we had one of the listeners come in, and that was the guy I shared online, and he was like, I'm a British ammunitions technician. I know those Hellfire missiles. To me, this looks like something going through a balloon. And I was like, all right, okay. And then we were looking back on the video and going, well, if you want to tell me it's deflecting an object, okay, but it does look like, if you're just looking at face value,
Mm-hmm.
it goes through whatever it is. Maybe it hits the bottom of it, maybe, but if you're just face value, 2D, it goes through the object. Okay, and then bits come off it. Okay. So it just made sense, and that's when I was like, I'd love to be convinced or be told something that makes me think it's NHI or alien, whatever. Cool, that's fine. And let's say we had those chats in the chat. I've said really, probably really grossly, Dan, I could have made money jumping onto YouTube night after night after night, spamming the bombshell stuff, spamming the exclusive, spamming the rocket hits alien craft and keeps moving.
Yeah.
But just for me, I'm like, I don't feel good about that, because I would rather be proven wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm on the fence, but I'm leaning more towards it's some kind of balloon with a payload under it, okay? Or I'm proven wrong and we've got proof of aliens, brilliant. And do you know what? If everyone wants to take the piss out of me at that point and, haha, look, it was aliens, I'll be like, amazing, brilliant.
Cool, yeah,
that's
I'm
really
stoked
good.
too, yeah.
However, what tends to happen is people jump on the sensationalism. They jump online, they use all these incredible sensational language, they tell you what you're seeing rather than let you decide on your own. And then when it's shown to be something else, they completely ignore all the shit they gave people who were on the fence or on the other side of it and just move on.
Yeah.
Or they say it's a psyop and everything else. So, yeah, for me, yeah. And do you know what? Corbell said there's another 5 minutes of the video. Cool.
Let's love
But
to see it.
that,
Yeah.
without that, it still looks like very quick video. And it still looks to me and it's not just, I'm a nobody, right? I'm a layman. But you've got really experienced pilots coming out and saying it could be or is almost definitely prosaic. So that's fine. So you can't keep picking and choosing. Oh yeah, I mean, you can pick and choose who you listen to, but just allow yourself. Do you know what? I think this is something really sensational, but these really experienced folks are saying it might not be.
Yeah.
And it's also guys like Ryan Graves, like Chris Lato,
Yep.
who are into this topic and are into some of the sensational stuff, who are going, look, maybe not.
Sure.
And don't let that take away from, at the hearings, not to change the subject, some sensational testimony and some great stuff that came from it.
That's the next thing I was going to say is you made a point that, you know, this video is getting more people talking about it. I mean, it was on every news channel in the States. It was all over. I know it was on the BBC. It was being covered. It's great. It's getting people talking. It's getting more, you know, eyes on the topic. but I'm with you. It overshadowed this unbelievable testimony from Dylan Borland, which I think is like some of the most powerful things we've heard so far in any of
Yeah.
these hearings. And even the things that Jeff Nusatelli was saying, like his experiences, everyone and Alexandro, really amazing testimony that we're not hearing a lot about. It's all about this video. And it's like it's good and bad, kind of like what you said. But the testimony that we heard in that hearing was just pretty astounding. And I wish that was more the focus.
My concern is if you wanted this topic to be dismissed or laughed at or ridiculed, one way to do that would be drop a video into those hearings, which wasn't vetted properly. We know that much at least. I know we've all heard different rumours that they know more about it than they're letting on. But if that wasn't vetted and you're at, let's just use Arrow, and you want to debunk a lot of this topic and take a lot of the eyes off of it, drop it in there. It was all that everyone showed on news clips and all everyone's talking about. So maybe some folk then check out the testimony, but the video was the highlight. You then, in the next couple of weeks or months, you drop the rest of the video, or you send a report out showing what exactly it was. And if that turns out to be some kind of targeting balloon with a payload hanging underneath it, which then comes up to the side on a string because it's following down slowly, what does that do for all those mainstream folks and all the public who looked at this and went, oh, that's really interesting. Now everything's a balloon. Now everything's explainable. And the testimony means nothing. That's my issue. And even simple questions for me, mate, like, so not only was it being filmed, they had 2 drones in the area at least. So they had one drone filming it and another one on its way to shoot a missile at it. So did they know it was there? So they knew it was in range for targeting or whatever. That's a strange one for me as part of it, that leans towards it's not just an object caught up and filmed it. No, there was multiple drones managing to film the same object.
True, but that would also make sense if it was somewhere close to a sensitive military installation, or we don't know how close it was to the shore. I mean, we don't know a lot. And I know that, in a lot of these videos, we have all the information around the corner of the...
Which is cut out.
Yeah, it's all there, but it has been trimmed to hide that stuff. But the original video does have all that stuff.
And then there's folks asking, saying the drone that fired the missile would also have a camera.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the footage from that?
Sure. And I think that footage is all in the same place. It's all on that, what SIPRNet or whatever it is that all the ships have. I was present when that video was shown the night before the hearing with folks, and I was there when there were some phone calls made right after it was showed to kind of vet the story. So I know Burleson said that it was like a dead drop.
Yeah, but
I don't think that is accurate.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. He didn't just get it sent. It wasn't texted from someone. It was not like a DM on Instagram. I mean, that came from someone serious.
And there's another issue for me. It was shown in a hearing, which is labelled transparency.
Yeah.
Was one of the key words in that title.
Yeah.
It's not very transparent and doesn't help either way.
Sure. That's a good point. And again, it did pull away from some incredible testimony, but all in all, I was incredibly pleased with that hearing. I mean, I don't think I have any issue with that one. I was pretty pleased, and I think it was a pretty powerful, more than the last one. It did move things forward a bit.
Yeah, and I think listening to the latest Weaponized, Corbell and Knapp have said that there's more whistleblowers coming forward. One of them sooner than later. So for me, I would expect to hear in the next couple of weeks on Weaponized one of those whistleblowers who weren't part of the hearing.
I would think so. Let's talk about your book. I want to say that there's so many UFO books out there. Some are incredibly dense with information. Some are, just picture books. And I want to honestly say that what I love most about your book is that it's accessible for anybody. I mean, I consider myself a bit of a fanatic and kind of an expert in this topic, as I'm sure you do. So I would give this book, I would recommend it to anyone who's deeply into the topic. And it also would be a great book for someone who's new to it. And I think the way you did it is brilliant. And I want to ask you to explain why you did it this way. And basically the book it's the Atlas of UFOs. And it's just a series of, 3 or 4 pages each of different cases, all interesting. And again, I feel like I've been into this for, I'm 45 since I was 8 years old, and there's still a couple cases in here that I was not aware of. So even I learned some new things. What made you want to write a book, and what made you want to do it in this fashion?
I didn't want to write a book. It was never it was never like I'll write a book one day. I'd done something before that Dan was doing with me, through a kind of small publisher, like a map. And it really was like a fold out map. So I couldn't count that as being an author. After the Grush hearing, I had a publisher reach out to me, and they had heard me on UK TV doing like a call-in show, where I was the UFO guy, obviously. And they were like, really like Jay on that. We've got a series called Unexpected Atlases, and we wanted to do a UFO one and wondered, would you be interested in writing the UFO version? And I was like, look, I remember really succinctly saying, I'm not an author. I'm comfortable writing stuff down. I used to write comics as a kid, but for my own reading and viewing,
Right.
I had a series, Extraordinary Boy, which is getting the name out there for the first time in the world. So little me would have been really excited to hear that said. I've never mentioned that before.
Extraordinary boy. I love it.
Yeah. And I remember, so I could write, and I enjoyed writing in school. But in terms of like researching, and if you look at behind me, I've got like Graham Rendell, Richard Dolan, Ross Coulter's book, George Knapp's, Avi Loeb, Diana Pasulka, yeah, Ryan Woods, really like actual authors and researchers and historians and experts in their field. I am not one of those. So I
Well,
told
you are, Andy. You kind of are. I mean, that's. I know you don't want to say it, but like, you've put half a decade into this so far. You are someone that is trusted by the public here. You know your shit. You talk to all the main people. You have your own feelings. You push back when you want to. Like you are well within your rights to write a book. By the way.
well, cheers.
Yeah.
Well, I'd said to them, look, I can write stuff down, and they went, look, but I was like, in terms of like pictures, and I don't know how all that works, and they were like, we'll sort all that. We'll have a cartographer doing the maps. We'll have a picture researcher doing all the pictures. We'll just ask for your advice and any links to stuff that you think would be good. If you write it all down, a copywriter will go through and make sure it reads okay. So I agreed to do it. I wouldn't have self-published. I wouldn't have went out and written a book on my own. I had ideas that if I was going to, I would have loved to have done the UFO encyclopedia, but up to date, with the whole A for Arrow, OSAP, ATIP, and let folks know modern day what was going on with the topic, kind of 2017 onwards. Not that I probably ever planned on doing it anytime soon. Just when kind of time allowed. That would have been it, because for me, I can write kind of short blurbs for that kind of stuff, as opposed to chapters and chapters, and all these great researchers and authors that I mentioned before, your Dolans, your Graham Rendells, your Diana Pasulkas, that write really good, long, well-researched books. I've not got that in me. I don't have the time. I don't think it's my skill set to do that kind of stuff. So what I agreed with the publisher was I would do the cases, and it would be snapshots. Virginia's in there.
Yeah.
And there are full documentaries with director's cuts coming out soon from James Fox. There are books on Roswell. There are volumes of books on Roswell. I've got it in there in like 5, 6, 7 pages with some pictures. And the idea was that it's a snapshot for folks who are newer to the subject, who can look at it and go, oh, this sounds really interesting, or I've only ever known about something crashed at Roswell. Well, here's some of the names. Here's some of the timeline. Here's what happened. Go and make up your own mind. And like anything, even with the podcast, maybe it inspires someone to go and do some more research themselves and get involved. People like yourself, you'll read Roswell and go, yeah, I know all that. That's fine. It's a nice snapshot. But like you say, to the other point of it, the publisher didn't give me many direct you have to do this. But what they did say was it needed to be international. It
Hmm.
couldn't just be the US. So I think it's 17 cases from the US, and then I think the other 17 are clearly international.
Yep.
It's got a good mix there. So you've got Brazil, Mexico, Australia, England, Brazil, Scotland, Iran, Belgium, Canada.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice,
it's got.
nice little map in there. Nice little
Yeah, I think
map.
it covers, doesn't it?
Yep.
It covers the bases with enough room for others. And even things like Kofu, Japan, Voronezh in Russia, Gwangju, South Korea. There's stuff there, but it might only be a couple of pages because there's not a lot of information on it, or
Mhm.
it was only a few articles in local newspapers. Maybe there's some documentation here and there, but it gives you a snapshot that these sightings, these experiences are varied, but they're happening across the world as well. And it allowed me to write it in a way that it was I was capable of doing it.
Hmm.
Genuinely, there was a time halfway through the book I considered contacting the publisher and saying, I can't keep doing this. I'm kind of struggling with it. They were very good, and other kind of stuff to help me get through that. But yeah, it was a bit of a slog through the middle, but I think the overall project and what people will enjoy and like about this isn't necessarily my incredible writing. And I appreciate you've said some nice things, and people have been really nice
Yeah.
about it. But I think it's a really nice presentation for what the subject is. I think it stands out on a bookshelf or as a coffee table book, and it's one you can give to friends and family as well and say, have a look at this. And do you know what I always loved was when I was younger, getting a book that you could pick up and you didn't have to start at the beginning,
That's
that
yes.
you could flick to a chapter you wanted to read. Or I remember going to a friend's house when I was much younger. It might have been a family friend's house, and they had on their toilet like some toilet books that, pardon the image you're going to get, but sitting on the toilet and flicking through a book. And I remember reading one years ago I had in my own toilet that was it was experiments that governments had done through the years and decades, or armies to their own people essentially.
Yep.
And it was some really interesting stuff, some
Hmm.
really horrible stuff at times as well, but you could just flick and read it over a couple of minutes and then put it back. And that's
Yes.
what I kind of wanted this book to be: pick it up, put it down, because it's what I could read, it's what I would read. And I think it's very much an entry point for a lot of folks, even into some of those more peculiar cases. Like I say, the San Carlos de Bariloche in Argentina, I'm just reading off some of them here. New Delhi in India, Dalnogorsk in Russia. Go and look at it. I've not done all the research. I've found them interesting. I've watched a couple of documentaries. That stuff's out there. You might not have heard of it. Go and check it out. And if you're the type of person who from that can go and write a full book, please do, because
Yeah.
I'm not the person to do that.
Right. Right.
So yeah, hopefully it's a nice snapshot and a bit of a reflection of me, I think.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, like you just said, I was actually going to mention that it's like kind of like a perfect bathroom book, or like you're going to the doctor's. You're going to be in the doctor's office in the waiting room for a while, and I just opened it randomly, and like there's like Colaris and stuff like that, and it's like 3, 4, 5 pages, and you got a new story. When you were doing your research, did you are there any stories in here that were new to you when you started doing the book?
Oh God, yeah. Like some of the stuff, like the Russian cases, were pretty new. I knew about Tehran, the
Yep.
Iranian. I knew about it, but I learned more doing it there. And I also found some cool channels out there. There's some really good ones anyway, like Eyes on Cinema, things like that are really good for their UFO cases.
Yeah.
There's some great stuff out there. And what was interesting, I think I learned really early on. I'll tell you the process for doing it, right?
Yeah, please.
Early on, and the book's out now, so the publisher wouldn't be annoyed anyway. But like when I arranged to do it in August 2023, they said to me, if you can have 2 sample chapters over by the end of October. So on October 30th, I had written nothing. Um,
My man.
I think I had a list of here's some stuff I might write about, and it would have been all your usual stuff. And I went into a Starbucks early evening, and I spent 4 hours, and I done Virginia, and did I do Roswell? Can't remember. There was 2 cases though, and I wrote those down. And I remember thinking, I really need to go back and do these again. And I did go back over them. And I sent them over, and they were like, actually, these read really nicely. Like, we can work with this. This is good. There's not a lot to fix here. And I was like, okay, that's nice. And then I probably left it to maybe the January or February of 2024. And I still had only done those 2 sample chapters. I had maybe written a bit more of a list. And I really had to get myself in gear at that point. So I started spending a lot of nights going to Starbucksies. There was one in a cinema in Newcastle, near where I stay, and I would go to the Starbucks and spend a couple of hours writing a chapter. I'd watch a documentary on my laptop, or I'd listen to a podcast. I'd read some articles, and then I would cross-reference some stuff and be like, I've heard this, but I've also heard this about this subject. And I would kind of check stuff up. That's where things like ChatGPT came in handy, just to kind of argue with it. Because I would be like, for example, so I think is it the Kofu, Japan? Well, I've just got it open here, where there's two young boys have a sighting.
Yep.
And I watched two different documentaries, and they were kind of those like 20, 25 minute animated documentaries with a narrator,
Yes.
two young boys in Japan were in for an incredible night. Like and subscribe the video below before we get right, okay?
I love when you do the accent. I love when you do the accent. It's great.
It was those. I won't do the Japanese accent. American's fine. But in one documentary, they mentioned the boys run into a vineyard, and in the other, it mentioned they run into a graveyard. And I was like, well, that's really similar telling of the story, but it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was like, so ChatGPT, I'm looking this up, vineyard, graveyard, what's the deal here? Because it's really hard to research that case because there's only a couple of articles around it, really, from the newspaper at the time, and it's in Japanese, so you have to get stuff translated. And it was like vineyard and graveyard are very similar when it comes to Japanese, so that translation can be lost. So it's really difficult to work out if it was a vineyard or a graveyard. It's more than likely. So I think I wrote that in the book to say it's difficult to know which one is right, but the story overall is correct. So I learned a lot of things like that, where I'd watch a couple of documentaries on a particular case, and you would see the same story being told, but there would be little differences here and there. And I don't think folks have to take that as someone's bullshitting in the case. It can just be different remembrances or different vantage points or different angles, and details change over time, don't they, with memory?
They do, yeah.
So that was the kind of process, and then it came to the Euros in 2024, and I used to I work 9 till 5, like Monday, Friday. I would go into the office, I would spend my lunch times, or if I had some time during the day, writing the book, but then I would wait till 5 o'clock when people had left, and I would lock myself in one of the rooms. I would have the Euros, the football on in the background, but then I would have a TV in the room because it was like I work for a satellite television company. So I had lots of TVs. I'd have a documentary on in the background, the football on in a different TV, and I'd have my work laptop and my MacBook, and I'd have like one open with Google and one open with writing, and I'd have like a documentary, Google and websites ready, and then my laptop to write, and I would just do it like that. So I spent this summer 2024 writing a real bulk of it. And then kind of through the rest of the year fine-tuned it and wrote a little bit more. And it got to the point where, right, I'm 25, 26, 27 chapters in, last few chapters to go. That's where maybe some of the famous cases, like the Phoenix Lights isn't in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my favourite case. And a lot of folks are like, why haven't you written about this case or that case? And I'm like, well, some stuff had to go. And it is a really well-known case. But I was also like, if I ever do another one, I would start with that.
Sure.
Or maybe if they do like a second edition of this one or something, I don't know. I would put stuff like that in. But it came like by February 2025, I had handed in, here's the finished load of articles, and just had to speak to the copywriter on a weekly basis. And the copywriter clearly wasn't a UFO person, because they'd be like, oh, I remember one particular argument I had with them was, you've said the object's craft was aluminium-like, so was it aluminium or not? And I was like, I'm talking about spaceships. I don't know.
I don't fucking know.
It's aluminium-like was the description. And I had to be like, here's the article. Here's what it said, aluminium-like. That's what I'm taking it off of. That's the direct quote. Stuff like that. But it got there in the end, and I'm pleased with the final product, and people seem to like it, which is nice.
Oh, it's fantastic. But you mentioned the Phoenix Lights, and one of my questions for you was, what are some of your favorite cases? So if that's your favorite case, how does that end up not being in the book? Was that a publisher choice, or was it something that just like
me?
Yeah, it was you.
Yeah, me. Just it was on the list, and I think I had like, here's all the cases I know of, and I think like anyone outside the US, a lot of the cases are US. Sure. So you start going down the list, and it would have been a really easy one to write, but I tried to go with some of the cases that I knew less about, to kind of make sure that I was learning about it as I went along, so the reader learned about it as it went along, and it was kind of fresh for me. And it was one of those where I'm going to do the Phoenix Lights, I'm going to do the Phoenix Lights, and I just didn't end up doing it. So yeah,
It's kind of a good sign. It means you had a lot of other things you could put in the book. You weren't reliant.
I could have made it easier for myself and done it.
Sure.
But yeah, I did want some lesser known ones in there. Otherwise, you are just picking up a book and being like, I have read all this. And it would have been a bigger chapter as well. But like I say, I've left myself a little bit for, if indeed, not that I have an appetite to write a second one, but if the opportunity was offered to me and everything was right about it, and they offered me $500,000 or whatever.
I hope you get it. I hope you get it. That's
definitely not what they offer you.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it was worth it to me and the family and everything, then I'd put the work in and get it done. So yeah, there's stuff there to work with, I think, for a second book.
Awesome. I want to ask you a very speculative question. It just came up as you were talking. I mean, obviously, I grew up in the United States, so I think most of the stories being from here never really dawned on me that they're just mostly from here. As someone who's European, what do you think that's all about? Like, what if you're speculating? Why do you think there's so many cases here? And being European, are you like, I wish we had more of our own cases? Do you wish there was more where you're from?
Yeah, we've got some good ones, but
some great ones.
I was on a UK radio show yesterday, but I recorded it last week. So it's Radio X, and the host is called Danny Wallace. Have you seen the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's based on a book by Danny Wallace called Yes Man, right? So he wrote that book. Really funny guy, but he really likes his UFOs, really likes the topic. And just in speaking to him, he was saying things to me and explaining things to the producers that I was like, yeah, you do actually know your stuff. Like, really knew his stuff. He was talking about the MVQ-9 drone and the Hellfire missile video and the hearings. And so, yeah, I was like, fair play. What was my point here? Oh, yeah, European. So he asked me the same question around, why is this always in the US? Why is it such a US-centric phenomenon? And I know folks are really skeptical on the topic. I've got a friend, Colin, who I done his podcast last week, and it's not a UFO podcast. And he's like, yeah, it's all cranks in the States living in trailer parks that see these things. So that's quite a broad view, but it's one that's probably quite popular with a lot of the public that
big time.
Outside the US. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain look and an accent.
Even in the US, I mean, even in the US, historically, growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was very much about, like, UFOs. People that had experiences, abductees, were always white trash, trailer park.
Cletus from The Simpsons type, get my gun, Brandy.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it has always been painted.
That sticks with people, Hollywood and TV series and whatnot outside of the US. That's what we were brought up on in the UK. You watch a lot of TV from the US and movies from the US. That's why I can do the accent so well. It just kind of sticks with you as you grow up. So yeah, he asked me the same question about why it's such a US centric phenomenon, and I said, look, it's a bigger country. It's huge. And if you were going to look at statistically, if you've got more people in a bigger area, then there's more chance of seeing things. But also, I think there's a lot of misidentifications. I think there's a lot of secret testing goes on. So you would do it in a big open space when there's not a lot of stuff out in the middle of deserts and whatnot as well, where a lot of these things are seen. But also, I said maybe it is just the case that an element of this phenomenon originates there, off the coast of California, off, whatever it may be, Alaska, all that kind of stuff. So for me, it just makes sense. There's a few reasons for it. But also, it's the US, it's Hollywood, it's where a lot of folks' imaginations were curated, probably from childhood. So there is more of an interest in the glitz and glamour. I remember in college, one of my presentations was on how the UK were presenting the Iraq War and how the US were presenting the Iraq War. And I mean literally presenting it from a television aspect, and how the UK would be like, today in Helmand province in Afghanistan, this happened, and over in Iraq. And it was very somber and very serious. But if you stuck a US channel on, it's like, tonight on the Iraq War. And it's like this, there's almost a glitz and a glamour to these invasions, and a presentation, and the graphics going across the TV, and the way the numbers, the statistics are presented. It's so different. And I think there's just that kind of glitz and glamour to so much stuff in the States. The UFO topic is like that as well. One of my favourite things, right, just to talk about that bias of how something's presented, is that if you ask someone what noise does a frog make, they tend to say like ribbit.
Yeah.
And it's like that's because the frog that makes that noise is traditionally only found near Hollywood in California. Most frogs throughout the world croak. However, if you're making movies back in the day and you needed a frog sound effect, the frog goes ribbit.
That's
But
really
most
funny.
frogs don't.
I didn't know
So
that.
throughout the world, traditionally ask a child what does a frog do, they'll go ribbit. Most frogs don't.
Yeah.
But that's what you know because of TV, because of Hollywood. So if Hollywood tell you this is what aliens are, this is who looks at the subject. Independence Day, look at the crop dusting farmer that saves the day at the end of it. White trash, crop duster, alcoholic,
Yeah.
alien abduction experience, everyone laughing at him.
Yeah.
That's what people know.
Yeah.
So if you had, imagine the remade, right, and this would, I don't think it would go down well in Hollywood, but imagine A Few Good Men, Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, right?
Yeah.
Demi Moore, yeah.
Yep.
Imagine that, but it was about UFOs, courtroom drama, UFOs. How different the topic would look.
Good point. And that's kind of what I think the new Spielberg movie might be more like. I have a feeling it's going to be more like a not a courtroom, but like maybe it might be more like about the hearings and that kind of stuff, but it might be like that. But it would be completely different, wouldn't it?
A little bit more military, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that E.T. kind of touched on that as much as it was a family drama. You had that the bad military guys in the background, but what if this time some of the good guys are the military folks trying to get this out? But again, how much the public want to see the David Grush story
Mm-hmm.
without a lot of sensational elements added to it, I don't know. But yeah, so can't remember the original question about the why the US. I think it's that. I think there's multiple reasons, but if we really want to go bingo card 2025, balls to the wall, swing for the fences, there's a base close to the US and it's underwater, and why not?
I kind of am feeling that a little bit. It seems like a very sci-fi way to look at it, and it's hard to like tell people that and not have to like. Well, I'm not crazy, but just if you look at the evidence, the Navy, but it does feel like there's something like that going on. Not too far from where I live, right off the coast of
You
Southern
know,
California.
Yeah, do you know what? One of my favorite things I've done, and I've been really fortunate to get asked to do a lot of UK radio appearances, face for radio, not TV. So sorry to the folks on YouTube. But getting offered the book was off the back of doing the TV hour long call in, but it was actually a radio show that was simulcast on to BBC Two.
Okay.
Right at the end of it, the host, Nicky Campbell, he used to present Wheel of Fortune in the UK. That's how a lot of folks will know him in the UK, right? From back in the day. Um, I had done a lot of talking, and I think he was really enjoying the conversation, and he kept coming back to me, and they had like an astrophysicist on who was really skeptical. And it was really good because I remember they had some people call in to basically talk about their sightings, and this girl, like, no harm to her, but she was really derogatory about the UFO topic, and they were talking about the hearings, and she went, well, these things are always seen, aren't they, in the to your point, the United States, they're always seen by, people in the Central Belt. Every caller that day, I think there was four, they were all from the UK. Two of them had seen sightings. One was like Europe, one was maybe like Alaska, and the other two were somewhere else in the UK. And I was like, to your point, you've just said the very problem with this topic. Everything happens in the States. All four of these callers are from the UK. All other sightings happened outside of the
Yeah.
US, because the other one wasn't Alaska. They were all UK. And I was like, so there you go. Straight away, your argument doesn't hold water. And then right at the end, the host kind of and gave me the last word, and he was like, Andy, what are we dealing with here? Tell us something. Are we dealing with aliens coming from different planets? And I think he was expecting me to say, like, yes, blah, blah, blah. And I went, look, Nicky, maybe these things aren't coming from that far away. Maybe they've been here for a long time already. And there was just a pause, and he went, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Where? And I was like, probably under the water. I was off the coast of California and various places around the world, but I think they're under the water, and they have been for a long time. And I said, if any of your viewers have not seen the film The Abyss, watch that, and maybe that's along the right lines. And he just went, well, what a way to end the show. And I just think that was the only thing. If nothing from that, people won't remember the whole show, but if they can remember the last thing that was said, it was maybe they aren't coming from different planets.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just to get people thinking in a different way for me is what I try and accomplish in anything that I do. Because, like you say, there's so many difficult conversations to have with friends, with family, with the public to do with this. If you can just get them on the back foot and not on the defensive, and just make them go, just for a moment,
Yeah.
you can get a lot of people involved that way.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think I'm sure you're the UFO guy in your friend group. I am that, and I'm starting to dread when people ask me, what's going on with UFOs? What's happening? What's going on? And because I'll just start like vomiting out all the stuff I've been
Mm.
learning and the conversations I'm having. And David Groshny, who's in he worked for the NRO, he's an intelligence officer, and I just start to sound like a crazy person because I'm trying to like just get it all out in a 2 minute conversation, but it's not possible. This conversation cannot happen as you're in the break room at a job. This is it's a long conversation with so much density and so rich with information. It's hard to like get people up to speed quickly.
I tend to put it back on them, especially if it's like workplace stuff. I'll be
Same,
like,
yeah.
well, I'll be like, yeah, what do you know, or what do you want to ask? What do you think?
Hmm.
And you get, I don't know, and yeah, put it on them, and then just kind of answer their questions that way. Good
Yep.
advice for anyone who's got like friends or family wanting to talk about it, or if it comes up, don't feel you have to defend the topic. Just ask them, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
And if you tend to find people don't go, oh, it's all bullshit,
Yep.
they'll open up and give you some kind of way in to have a conversation with them. I think what the interesting part tends to be is what's the jumping off point of the conversation. Oh
Hmm.
well, yeah, maybe they are coming here from different planets. Maybe it's some other stuff as well, though. Oh, like what? Well, maybe they've been here a long time. Maybe we've got non-human drones visiting here from other planets, different dimensions. We don't know. All right, okay, but then you start going down like abductions and underwater bases. For a lot of people, that tends to be too much,
Yeah.
and I can get that.
Sure. But that's when I get really excited. Like the
Yeah.
abduction thing, like I see earlier, like you're the part that most intrigues you. Abductions are the one for me that I'm just like I'm riveted by that possibility. And to me, I think it's a reality, but I'm riveted by these stories and what's going on there. It's so fascinating.
I would love to know if any facet of, let's just use the US government, but people know what I mean by that. The US government includes janitors and administrative staff and clerks, and right, that's not them, but the shadowy parts who are involved in this, can they bring on abductions themselves? Do they know how to get an abduction going?
You asked George Knapp that question,
I did, yeah.
and his
My favorite question I've ever asked a guest.
I got goosebumps right now because his response really freaked me out, or his lack of response
Mm.
really said something to me. And I've seen him, I've been around him quite a bit, obviously in recent weeks, but I haven't had a chance to ask him, like, you didn't answer that question. Like, what is going on? Like, why didn't you answer that? It's such an intriguing question, and it's a brilliant question. Have you asked that of anybody else, and have you gotten any kind of response about it?
No, that was one I didn't have written down. That just kind of popped into my head at the time, and I remember asking it, and I think Nap kind of goes, he kind of pauses, doesn't he? And he's like, I don't want to go into that because it's an element of the topic that's pretty scary, and yeah, so I think it's one of those where he's probably aware of that kind of stuff, but maybe that's the kind of things you hear about where they don't want to go into detail, and if they have figured out a way that, you imagine some poor soldier, and we talk about those tests and like experiments being done on people with weird gases and drugs and, giving spiders LSD and stuff like that over the years to see how they react. Imagine working out we have got like a frequency like a dog whistle, and we can summon what we know as a craft that would be involved in an abduction,
Yeah.
and having some poor soldier strapped to a bed. And
Fuck,
but
dude.
in my head, I've got a bunch of guys standing behind plexiglass, and they flick a switch, and next thing,
It,
I don't know how it would work, but that would be a really terrifying element to this. And also, if that is something that's real in that phenomena, and they could do that, they would probably want to.
Of course they would. There'd be some kind of like pick some random soldier or someone volunteers, for their country or whatever to be that guinea pig or whatever. Um, it's a wild thought. And I've thought about that so much since you asked that question, and I hope you keep asking that question of people that might have some insight. Um, one of the people who was in and around the hearings, the last hearing, I was having a conversation with about, and I brought up abductions, and this is a prominent person to this conversation, and this person teared up and didn't go too much into it, but had a visceral emotional reaction about it. And that was very telling to me. And I need to follow up and ask some more questions. But yeah, we have a lot of questions to ask and a lot of conversations to have. But yeah, it's so interesting. A couple more questions and I'll let you go. I wanted to ask you, if you could be present for any historic case, you could be standing there watching what happens, whatever it is, in any in the history of UFOs, what would be your one that you want to see in person or be around for?
Um, one of two, because I used to always default to Roswell, because I think you've got crashed craft in the desert, big operation to remove bodies being wheeled away, all that kind of stuff. But also, I've mentioned the Phoenix Lights because you've got this huge object flying over the city. And do you know what? Maybe you'd be able to go back in time with that knowledge and say you went back to it and actually it was just flares dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And you could go, do you know what? They all got it wrong. This is bullshit. However, I imagine you would see something very different and the
Yeah.
flares come along later and get
Yeah.
dropped. I would love to see both of those. Roswell kind of hiding up in the mountains looking down just so no one arrests me and ruins it. But yeah, Roswell and Phoenix Lights for me are the two you would need to get back to for different reasons.
Beautiful. Great. And have you ever been sort of, have you ever had a conversation on this that sort of maybe started to scare you off the topic or made you want to like reconsider? Have you gotten nervous having any of these conversations before?
No.
Great.
Like, yeah, no, it's never had that. I think I've had like I've seen conversations and it's maybe not quite what you're asking, or I think a lot of it's happening just now where there's people who are saying things and doing things that I'm a little bit disappointed in, but that's just from a me point of view. But if it gets hundreds of thousands of views, then cool,
Great.
not for me.
Yeah.
But I suppose the only thing wouldn't scare me away from it. But I have disappointments where people go down roads or routes that aren't for me. But again, I always I've said this before, Dan, but you know, like when and I'll use the Harry Potter books. So I read the Harry Potter books as a kid, like the first couple, and I'm not one of those snobs. It's like you have to read the book. The books are better than the movies, right? If you want to watch a fucking movie, watch a movie instead. It's that does my head in. People with that opinion, you know, each to their own. But I read a couple of the books as a kid from the library where I got all the Loch Ness stuff. I remember the first one, it was recommended to me because I'd read a different book. And the librarian was like, "What are you looking for?" And I went, "Oh, I just read this one about a witch. That was quite good." And I remember she gave me that and it had like a stamp on it. It won some kind of award, the first Harry Potter one. She went, "This has been really popular. People really like this." And I read it in like a day. Um, so, um, but in your head, you create that world, you create the characters, you create images. Like Hogwarts looks like a certain thing, and I always thought Hermione's name was Hermione,
Mm-hmm.
just I pronounce it as Hermione, right? But then a director takes over that project and then creates this movie, and that's their visualization of the world and the author's world, and here's the characters, and maybe they speak a little bit different, maybe they act a little bit different, maybe the school looks a little bit different. I think with the UFO topic, you get what you hope someone does, what you hope they say, what you hope a whistleblower looks and sounds like, and then there comes a point where they don't do something you expected, and at that point you can either be like, "Oh, that's really good," or "Actually, I don't like that." And that's where this whole what disclosure looks like could
Mm-hmm.
look very different to what people expect it to look like. And it doesn't mean you have to be disappointed. You can if you want, but just be a little bit open to people are people. If you see people going off what you think is the original message, if you see people selling merchandise, I've seen the last couple of days people kicking off about that kind of stuff online.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you're allowed to think what you're allowed to think. It doesn't mean that they might not have a good message or the right message. And again, I mentioned Stephen Greer. Maybe he does still have contact with aliens, and maybe his CE5 app is worth getting, maybe you do see the benefit of it, and maybe one day the aliens land and go, right, where is Stephen Greer, because he has been an absolute champion for us in doing a lot of good work down here, and people like me will need to go, cool, fair enough,
Yeah.
Greer, I'll download your app right now, and I'll start on that CE5 stuff. But yeah, it's a very complex and complicated, not just phenomenon, but just subject to wade your way through. And this is where I do have some sympathy for any and all political figures who are now getting involved, because they have so much catching up to do. And I think Burleson's a really good example where he has Grush working with him as a part-time consultant, but he's also got Stephen Greer, he's got Danny Sheehan, and he's got Knapp and Corbell, and they're all in his ear.
Yeah.
And you're getting decades of different narratives, agendas, and knowledge all being put upon you, and you're trying to get up to speed based on all of this stuff, and a lot of it will be conflicting. So I don't envy them, but I appreciate what they're trying to do.
Yep. Great. I totally agree. I like the fact that you've had Burleson on your show a couple times, once, twice.
At least once. Can't remember if I had him second time.
I like Burleson. I got to meet him a little bit in Washington. And I think he's sincere. I think he sincerely wants to get some answers to this, and I'm happy that he's kind of taken on the project pretty heavy right now.
Yeah. Fair play to him.
Yeah. What do you want to see in future hearings? First of all, I would like to see hearings in other parts of the world. I know Brazil just had one the other day. What do you want to see in an upcoming hearing that we haven't seen yet, or what do you want to see?
So I'm happy for the hearings to keep happening, but I understand the laws of diminishing returns. Where are we going to keep getting the same type of thing where it's, here's my testimony, I saw something pretty interesting, cool. There's only so many times I feel you can really do that before it has to change. We do at some point need to get Nat was totally right on Weaponized when he said it's very difficult to get folks who have worked with the bodies, who have worked with the craft. That's what we need to really move it on to a different level for me. Testimony at hearings holds people's feet to the fire. It keeps the conversation public. The videos I can do without in the hearings. I would honestly, and this will be, some people will not agree with this, I would rather see those videos on Weaponized, on Joe Rogan, on News Nation with Ross Coulter. I would rather see them drop there to be discussed than dropped in one of those hearings. I don't feel it helps ultimately, unless it's really, 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 really good with chain of custody, provenance, longer video, and shows something really extraordinary that you can't debate.
Right.
And I mean like extreme movements, things like that.
Sure.
So we need that. And I always think that the Brent Spiner character from Independence Day, who was like Data in Star Trek, he's the guy that's been down working in Area 51 under the ground for like 15 years. He's not been out. His hair's a mess. Are you going to get folks like that coming forward? I don't know, because for someone to say, well, last week I was working my usual 50-hour week, and yeah, my job is to back engineer an alien craft we've got in a hangar at Wright-Patterson. Are we really going to get that? It's very, very difficult.
It's so hard. It's so difficult because like we already seen so far, like what these people lose, the livelihoods, and it's a huge risk to take. And it's dangerous too. I mean, it's a lot.
And listen, let's be honest. Let me ask your opinion on a question here, Dan.
Sure.
Say they take Burleson, Luna, and Burchett, right? And Grush comes through and gives them a location, and someone at, let's just use Lockheed Martin, goes, do you know what? Yeah, come in. I'm going to show you something. And they march the three of them into some location under the ground, along a big corridor, onto a train that takes them somewhere else underground.
Of course.
And they open a door, and there is half a saucer. And the three of them are shown, actually, with their own eyes, here's something we recovered 40 years ago that we are working on that we don't believe is human. Do you think they come out and tell us that the next day? Or do you think they actually shit their pants and go, wow, this is gone to a level of seriousness I didn't expect? That's when the guy next to them with all the medals and badges turns around and goes, do you see with your own eyes, what we're dealing with here
Right.
and why we can't just walk out and say this. And maybe they get whispered in their ear, we think some of these things are hostile or we think some of them are friendly. That maybe changes things for them. So it goes from being something that is speculation to real. And I've said before, mate, and again, apologies folks who disagree with this, you get a lot of, let's just call them UFO influencers online who will preach about disclose everything, tell the whole world everything tomorrow. Won't work. It'd be an absolute nightmare.
No.
I reckon even some of those like hardcore UFO folks, if you gave them 5 minutes in a room with, let's just say, the person who knows everything, right?
Yeah.
Sits across from them on a desk and says, I can tell you the 5 minute history of this topic and also the really scary shit. Some of the good stuff, but the really scary stuff too. I'm going to be, and they get to know the God's honest truth. And at the end of it, they say, okay, you can walk out that door knowing what you know, or you can take this pill and you'll forget the last 5 minutes. I reckon most folk take the pill and go, actually, I'm glad I didn't know that.
You do. You think most people would not want to know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's what I think.
Interesting. My initial reaction is that people would want to know, but now you get me thinking.
But then once they know, it's, did I not know that for a reason? Or I didn't mind some of that, but there's one or two things there that, yeah, I'm quite happy going back to speculation and a place of kind of ignorance is bliss. And yeah, I think a lot of folks would rather not know. And I think that's maybe some of the real scary, burdensome stuff that, you know, when you hear about people being kept up at night and not being able to sleep for days and
Absolutely.
weeks.
Yeah.
That could be that. And I think even, and I would love to, this is what I don't know about the pill myself. Like genuinely, if that ever came up, I don't know what I would do. However, imagine someone could show you like the gimbal video and it was like the real 4K.
Yep.
Wow, that's unequivocally something strange and it's got the cubes and spheres behind it and it shoots away. Something you look at and go, fuck, that's it. That's the video.
The one. Yeah.
The world changing video. I wonder how many folks would watch that and actually feel terrified after it.
I mean, that's the question, right? I mean, you hear about that meeting, what was it, 2004, when Hal Puthoff and his team were supposedly meeting with the U.S. government to have a discussion about, you know, disclosure and telling people what they know.
Yeah. Things, yeah.
Yeah, and they decided it's probably not in the best interest, and that's coming from people who are having a serious conversation.
That just got brought up on the Joe Rogan with Matthew McConaughey.
It did?
Yeah, that was the other day. Joe Rogan mentioned Putov's meeting and the pros and cons of disclosure. And McConaughey was like, you know, wow, that's really interesting. And what did they say? And they was like, yeah, they worked out there'd be more cons than pros when it comes to the disclosure topic. I mean, so yeah, no, I agree.
They know more than we do, but I still have to think that we could deal with it. If you were given the option to know everything, that same guy will give you the briefing. You get the presidential briefing, Andy. You get it, but you can't tell anybody. Do you take it?
I don't know that it would change like your own biases so much, because then like how do I do the podcast tomorrow without
right? You're speaking from a different
line of questioning totally changes. Imagine I know like abductions are bullshit, all of them. Like someone tells me no, that is not a thing. Like we can tell you okay, so all of a sudden gone, conversation dismissive, not interested. But I find out that the Tic Tac was an empty non-human drone that was manufactured off the coast of California. There is an underground lab creating these things. They were left here by something a long time ago. We don't know when and if these things might come back. I don't know. I always love the idea that, and this is the stuff that I think gets discussed less, but there's loads of room for. But imagine we got the old White House lawn UFO landing, and there is, as it would be right now, President Trump, God love him, walks out with the aliens, and he does the whole, we've got the best aliens here, they chose us, right? And he comes out, and we get that confirmation, and they're in their saucer, and they come out, and Trump says, you know, we love what you do, we love your saucers, the saucers
love
are great.
What you do.
Yeah, love your saucers, you know, I've got one myself, you know. And they says, you know, what about the triangles? And these little aliens go, what triangles? You know, the triangles you fly in? And they go, oh, we don't know who they are. So then there's this thing of, what if we learn something, but it's not everything?
Right.
And something lands here and goes, yeah, we don't know what those are. We can tell you what those are and what those are, but those are, yeah, we don't know those. Like, there's an assumption that you're going to have this unlocked knowledge. And that's why, for me, right, the most realistic way this unfolds, people may or may not like it, is you're looking at 5 to 10 years. And I know that's such a bullshit thing in the UFO topic, but this is just my opinion.
Yep.
We'll get confirmation of maybe the Mars thing, right? The ancient microbes. It's cool. So there used to be something on Mars, little bugs, whatever it was. Cool, makes sense. Opens the imagination to maybe there was other stuff there, right? James Webb will find biosignatures or technosignatures or whatever the James. I won't pretend to know the ins and outs of the James Webb and what it can and can't do. What it doesn't do is pick up 8K high definition pictures of streets on other planets, right? But we find there is pollution being made on a planet really far away. We then manage to send a probe or whatever it is, or we get something trained on it. And again, NASA come out and say, do you know what? We've been looking at this planet and this system for the last year. There's artificial light being created on this planet.
Yep.
We've found pollution. We think there's a civilization on there.
The city lights we heard about last year. The city lights.
It's 1,000 years away though. We are not getting there in our lifetime. And we don't know who's there, what's there, if it can come here. But we're going to send a probe. Okay? Cool. That then gets the public knowing there's something out there and it's really far away. But then you just start walking that back to, okay, does that mean there's other things are coming here? Does that mean some of this UFO stuff's real? And it just gradually opens up the imagination. I remember, like, if you go to your sink and turn the tap on full blast, boom, the water hits the bottom, sprays everywhere, makes a fucking mess. It's not good for anyone. If you just slowly undo the tap, bit by bit by bit,
Right.
the sink will fill up and you won't get the same mess. And you'll get the end result. And I think that's what, when you get this kind of slower disclosure, that's the best way to let the public know. And it just slowly gets people on board at different stages. Because even once we find out there was life on Mars thousands of years ago, you know, people aren't going to go, oh yeah, there's aliens. But some people will go, shit, that's really interesting. So there was life elsewhere. And you just slowly get more and more people on side as the stages go along, and you find stuff, you find stuff, you find stuff. And for me, 5, 7 years, 10 years, you can have a hell of a lot out there.
It feels like we're doing that now. It really does feel like we are in that exact process at the moment.
Yeah, and maybe all the hearing stuff and everything else is a part of that in a way. Maybe directly related, maybe not. But I think there's then stuff people can go back to and go, right, we say they then get to the point we think we know there's life out there. People have got this back catalogue of podcasts, documentaries, radio shows, TV shows, movies, and people can go, here's some of the stuff you should be looking at. The back catalogue, the stuff to look at is there. It's been documented. The books are there. Maybe my book, maybe not. People can go and start to look and go, how do I start to educate myself on this topic when before I didn't? And get themselves up to speed.
Yeah, totally right. I mean, for me, disclosure, David Grush to me was basically, that was disclosure for me personally. Like, that was kind of officially disclosure for me. But yeah, Can I
ask you, sorry, Dan?
Sure.
Right. Say tomorrow we find out Grush was full of, I don't think so, right?
Yeah.
But say tomorrow we find out Grush was full of shit. Yep. How does that change what you think?
Oh, I'd be kind of crushed. I would feel set back a bit. Like my mind is made up on that.
Yep.
But if I got undeniable proof, I would have to just reassess what he said and ask myself, okay, what jumps have I made based on what he told us? Yep. I would have to try to do like a factory reset from 2023 to now. I'd be very disappointed, but I would have to take it for what it is and just like, okay, well, that one's out. We got to get back to square one with something. It'd be difficult because he was such, I think a lot of us consider him to be like the perfect witness so far. He set the bar where we need to be going forward, which is why we've had a tough time with people. I don't know. I don't want to name names, but there's been people that have come forward since him who don't seem to be as powerful a witness or someone whose stories we don't put as much stock into. And maybe it's because he was just so well spoken and just like had like a photographic memory of everything he heard, everything he read. He was just the perfect spokesperson for it. So it would be tough to deal with that if that was not true. Yeah. Andy, thank you for being on here. We talked about your book. Where is the best place for people to get it? Where can they get it? What do you suggest? And yeah,
Whatever's cheapest. Honestly, so many folks are
steal
really
it.
nice.
Steal this book.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what? As long as you share it online once you've stolen it, yeah.
Perfect.
But honestly, people reach out and say, "Where's the best place I make the most money?" I don't care. Like, I get like a really small percent of each sale. It's not going to make me rich unless everyone goes out and buys it, and then I could be rich. My wife would like that. We need to move house, so that would be good. But I'll just say Amazon's probably the cheapest. If you do get it, please leave a review. It really makes a difference. Same with like Dan's show, my show. Go and leave reviews. They help the algorithms and stuff. But it's available in the States in Barnes and Noble, in bookstores and stuff like that as well. I would love to see if people do see it out and about, take a picture of it even, if you're not going to buy it, and send me, just because it's quite cool to see it in different places. And if you do get it, I hope you enjoy it. People have. It's 18 months of hard work with some gaps in there, like I was really honest before. And yeah, I would just say, if I can do this, genuinely folks, anyone could write a fucking book if I can do it. And yeah, if you ever want to get started and you're not sure and you want to reach out to me, I'm a fucking nobody that seems to have done okay. So yeah, go and do it, folks.
It's got to be a real rush to see it in a bookstore. It's got to be cool to do that. I hope that you're proud of yourself. For people that have followed you from the beginning of your show, or people that are just getting on now, it's inspiring to see you do something like that. I think you might be the first person who of the US UFO podcast world to write a book who doesn't come from like a book writing, that aren't like proper writers. So congratulations. It's a great book. It is a great starting point. It's great for someone who's well versed, and it was really fun talking to you about it tonight. So thank you for doing it.
Anytime. Sorry it's taken me so long to come on and everything like that. And hopefully people have stuck around and understand the accent. And yeah, the book is not written in a Scottish accent, so that's one of the really accessible things with it.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah. And it's also available. I'll need to say it's also available on Kindle.
Oh, great.
And people keep asking me about an audiobook, genuinely. The publisher have said maybe next year once, because it goes to paperback and stuff eventually. But yeah, the hardback's really nice, so go buy it.
Beautiful. And please listen to That UFO Podcast, available everywhere. You can watch on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'll stand by it. I think you're the best interviewer in the field. I appreciate your approach and your sincerity and your honesty and your general interest. And it's a pleasure to know you, sir. And thank you for the work.
Thanks, Dan. And I would just recommend the best way to listen to That UFO Podcast, or indeed any of Dan's work, is stick on a playlist overnight while you're sleeping and let the adverts play. That's greatly appreciated, folks. Thanks.
Smart, man. You've been doing this a long time. I like your move. Andy, thank you very much. And everyone, thank you for listening. If you care for this interview, please share it with a friend. Like, subscribe, do the same thing. And please follow Andy and all of his work. And congrats on the book, Atlas of Unidentified Flying Objects, available everywhere now. Thank you, Andy.